Welcome to EDU 602 Instructional Strategies. I'm excited to share with you some of the latest research and the most effective strategies that research has shown to be effective in a classroom. We'll be working together over the next 8 weeks using two wonderful textbook resources that have been authored by Robert Marzano. As a way of introducing, we first should look at what really is effective teaching. And Marzano sort of talks about effective teaching as being both a science and an art. Many studies have shown that along with a well-articulated curriculum and a safe and orderly environment, the factor that has the single most influential component on an effective classroom is the teacher. Marzano says that it is an art because there is not a specific script all teachers use, and each teacher has their own individual characteristics and behaviors that they bring to the classroom. But he feels it's also a science because over the past several years, research has shown strategies over time that have a high probability of enhancing student achievement. The book for this class that we will use for the first section of our 8 weeks is arranged as a series of 10 questions. The first 9 chapters or questions comprise part of what Marzano calls the Domain 1 of effective teaching. The last chapter sort of pulls all of the information from the first 9 chapters together and helps you to actually plan a unit of study. The 9 questions that we will be addressing should be reminders of what needs to be in your thought process during a course or unit of study and the lessons that are in each of those units of study. Each instructor will no doubt answer some of these questions in different ways with different results. The intent of this class is to provide you with some high probability strategies that, again, research has proven to work, and you can keep these strategies in your toolbox to use whenever you see the need. Marzano has grouped his book, The Art and Science of Teaching, into 10 design questions. We will be looking at all 10 of the questions, but the first 9 design questions are the ones that constitute the 41 elements that we're going to be working with for the first 4 weeks. These 41 elements are grouped into 3 lesson segments, and I've arranged the readings of the chapter to help you look at these lesson segments according to the way that Marzano has designed them. So the very first question or chapters that we're going to be reading are chapters 1 and 6, and those will address routine events that should occur in every classroom. Things you have to plan no matter what lesson or what time you're going to be teaching. What are your goals for the classroom? And how are you going to arrange the students to be seating? So those are routine events that need to be in every lesson. The second group of readings that you will be doing are chapters or questions 2, 3, and 4, and those address the type of content you need to plan for. Is this a lesson that's brand new information to the students? Is this a lesson where you're asking them to practice material that you've presented before? Or is this a lesson where you're asking students to apply the content? Each of those types of lessons have different strategies to be used with them. And finally, the third lesson segment that Marzano talks about are behaviors that are enacted on the spot while you're teaching. And those will be found in chapters 5, 7, 8, and 9. Design question 10 then contains the action steps needed for planning and preparing a total course or a total unit of study within the content areas. As this class deals with the instructional strategies, that's going to be our major focus. So that is the reason I've grouped your readings and assignments to match these 3 different lesson segments. You will be designing a graphic representation or non-linguistic representation of the elements contained in each of the questions. Chapter 2 in your textbook, The Art and Science of Teaching, provides many different examples of what a graphic representation or non-linguistic representation might look like. I've also provided some links in your Week 1 folder that you might look at that'll be of assistance in helping you design. And I'm going to look at slide 3 now with you to just give further explanation of the project, and then slide 4 will contain an example of one that I've started for you so that you can see what we're talking about when we talk about non-linguistic or graphic representations. Let's talk a little bit more about that representation of elements or your model that you're going to make. During our week 0 WIMBA session, you were informed that you would be working cooperatively with another person in the class to discuss key points from each week's assigned reading. With your partner, you will then discuss and create a model using those key points that you come up with. You can design whatever model you would like. You can use pictures and words, you can use drawings, you can use a concept map, you can use a PowerPoint, you can use graphic organizers. There are lots of ideas that are out there. On the example I'm going to show you in a slide coming up, you will see that I used a program called Bubble Us, and it has bubbles that are connected with lines. You will then present your model that you design on all the readings that you do during the class by placing your model on discussion board, and then during our WIMBA session in week 4 or week 5, you will present how you went about selecting your key elements and why you came up with the design that you came up with. Also, during our week 2 WIMBA session, we're going to look at the key elements that you pulled out of each chapter and see if we can come up with some common elements so that we're all looking at the same important segments or important events that go underneath each of the lesson segments. One of the reasons for doing this in the way that I'm doing it is we know that having substantive conversation about new information really helps to cement that learning into long-term memory. So through our discussions, we will rework some of your elements that you thought were the key elements, but we will all have the same information then at that time. This is just one example of how you might represent some of the elements in Chapter 1. As I read Chapter 1, the design question was, what will I do to establish and communicate learning goals, track student progress, and celebrate success? I figured that the important 3 key points in this chapter were providing key, clear learning goals, tracking students, and then celebrating their success. Then I started to list underneath each of the subheadings what I thought the key elements were to accomplish those 3 headings. You will continue in this fashion for each of the chapters in your book, creating some type of model for each chapter. When we have our WIMBA sessions, we will then discuss your key elements, and when we have that substantive conversation about what everyone thought were the important elements, we can modify or we can keep the model that you designed, but at least we will have a chance to discuss them all together.